Okay, we are recording. Excellent. And good morning, everyone. Hello, friends and colleagues. Welcome to the Tourism Skillshop, hosted by State of Washington Tourism, SWT. My name is Matthew Ozuna. I am the Destination Development Manager at SWT. I will introduce today's webinar on website design. Please utilize the chat and say hello. Let us know where you're zooming in from today. And feel free to share your comments in the chat and use the Q&A feature as well. Maureen Graff is also on this webinar today. She is my colleague at State of Washington Tourism. She is the content manager at SWT. Marianne will monitor the chat and help address any questions from the audience near the end of the webinar. But if you have something that's really important, we can probably ask that during the webinar, right in the middle. Now, let's talk about the Skillshop series. The Tourism Skillshop is one of many industry educational programs from State of Washington Tourism. This webinar series will engage with colleagues across the tourism sector, and broaden their industry knowledge, skills, and network. Each webinar will highlight a specific issue or skill for tourism professionals to ponder and discuss with industry experts. State of Washington Tourism will host live webinars of the Tourism Skillshop on the 3rd or 4th Thursday of every month from 10 to 11 a.m. These webinars are free and open to the public, to all tourism stakeholders, really. The webinars will also be recorded and shared with registrants, as well as other users on the SWT YouTube channel. And Marianne has a link to that. She'll pop that in the chat for folks. For Tourism Skillshop and other industry updates, visit the SWT industry website, sign up for the industry update newsletter, and follow SWT on LinkedIn. Tourism Skillshop or tourism stakeholders may also join the SWT Facebook group for further discussion on topics related to the Tourism Skillshop and other industry news, issues, and events. Now, about this webinar. This webinar in the Tourism Skillshop will focus on one of the most important components of any digital marketing strategy, effective web design. Web design encompasses a multitude of variables, including layout, content, graphics, search engine optimization, which there's a Skillshop on, and conversion rate optimization. Creating a well-designed website that is fast, content-rich, and easy to navigate can help increase brand loyalty, improve search results, and attract more visitors to your website. This webinar will feature 3 guest speakers with extensive knowledge of digital marketing. Learn from Katie Egressy about the website redesign process for the Mountains to Sound Greenway Trust, web designer, Sarah Coffin, and web developer Patty O'Hare were involved with that redesign and will share their technical expertise and insights on the latest trends affecting tourism-related websites. The guest speakers will also cover cost, duration, KPIs, and DIY tools related to website design. Ladies, thank you for being here today. I'm excited to get going. So Katie, how about you start us off first? Tell us more about your background and your website redesign.
Hi, yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you just fine.
All right, great. And you can see the slides?
Oh, not yet. Did you share your screen?
1 second here. Let's see. It's tricky doing this on Zoom. Can you see it now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right. Hi, everyone. Here is our contact information for you. So my name is Katie Egressy. I am the communications manager at the Mountains to Sound Greenway Trust. So I wanted to take a second to share a little bit about the Greenway in case anyone on the call is not familiar with who we are. So the Mountains to Sound Greenway Trust is an environmental nonprofit organization based primarily out of the Seattle area. But we work within this greater Mountains to Sound Greenway landscape, which runs from Seattle to Ellensburg along Interstate 90. It's 1.5 million acres. It is a national heritage area as of a few years ago. And it also contains a national scenic byway. So I didn't see if there may be some other scenic byways on the call, but wanted to share that. So Like I mentioned, we're a nonprofit. We do a lot of different things to steward this landscape. I'm not going to get into all that today, but I hope that you will check out our website at some point after this presentation, and you can learn a little bit more about what we do. So I'm here today to talk about the website redesign that we did for the Greenway over the last year, working with Patty and Sarah. So I wanted to walk through kind of the 5 main things that we were hoping to accomplish through this redesign, and through that share some of our lessons learned and tips and things that we kind of discovered along the way. So the first goal was related to the fact that we became a National Heritage Area in 2019. So our content needs were really evolving. So the way that the website was set up, there was nothing necessarily wrong with it, but it just wasn't serving the purpose that we needed moving forward. So we needed to have more educational content on our website. We wanted to have more visitor-focused content on our website. So things like tours and itineraries, exploring our different National Heritage Area themes, and there just wasn't a home for that. So we first and foremost really needed to reorganize things, redo our navigation, and create space for future growth of content. So one takeaway on this is just not thinking only about your needs for today or a month from now, but trying to think into the future a little bit of like, what kind of content are you going to want to develop? What types of pages are you going to want? Because if you're like us, you're a nonprofit, you maybe don't have the biggest budget, you don't want to have to redesign your website again in a year. You want to be able to grow into it a little bit. So that's one takeaway on that first one. Our second goal of our redesign was actually merging 2 different websites. So we have an initiative here at the Greenway called Savor Snoqualmie Valley, and it was very visitor focused. So like I just mentioned, it had tours and itineraries and things, but we didn't have those capabilities for the Greenway. So through the redesign, we created templates to have walking tours and things for the Greenway. And through that, we were able to actually merge both of our websites. Which is great because now it's less work for me to be managing 2 websites. I can just manage one, and it allowed us to have more robust visitor focused content for the Greenway. So that was a big goal and a big win through this project. The third thing was bringing greater clarity to who we are and what we do. So of course, any organization wants people to come to your website and within a few seconds know what you do. Well, as I alluded to, the Greenway, and if anyone on this call, I think I saw a few familiar names, know the Greenway, we do a lot of different things. We work with a lot of different partners in a lot of different areas. And so our website just wasn't doing the best job about clearly sharing our work and examples of our work. So through the redesign, we created a new About Us section where we are able to share our projects and things in a more visual kind of compelling way. And so one thing that we were hoping to achieve through this is to have a home for more evergreen content. So we were writing a lot of blog posts, and we still do, and there's a time and a place for that. But what we were finding is that the blogs were getting buried. So people maybe don't know that the Greenway Trust actually helped build famous trails like Mailbox Peak, because the blog post was written, 10, 12 years ago, and they're not going to go back and find that. So we wanted to find a way to showcase those stories and have them easier to find on our website. So we did that, and then we also implemented a new system of tags and filters. So that allowed our content to go further because we can serve it up in different ways. So if someone's interested in a certain geographic area, say the Snoqualmie Valley, they can find our work in the Snoqualmie Valley. Or if they're interested in a type of project, like trails, for example, they can view that same content served up with the filter of trails. So it just made our site more dynamic and allowed us to create the same amount of content, but serve it to people where they're looking for it and where they're most interested. Goal number 4, I think we all know that most people are viewing sites on mobile these days, but I think it's hard sometimes when you're a marketer or whatever your position is, you're sitting on your laptop most of the day and you've got this big screen and your website looks beautiful and everything looks great, and then you got to remember that people are actually looking on this tiny screen. And so things that are a long scroll on a computer are a really, really long scroll on mobile. And so we just really tried to clean up our content, have more read more buttons so people can continue to explore the site if they're interested, but we're not bombarding them with a ton of content all at once. And then goal number 5 was, updating the front end of the website. So what the user sees, the look and the feel, but also the back end, which is what myself and other teammates have to deal with every day. So we wanted to modernize the site a bit. It had been a few years since we had done the original website, and we updated our headers, we updated our buttons, just kind of making it a little brighter and more visual. And I want to give a shout out to, I think she's on the call, Lisa Merrill is a photographer who volunteers with us. And she also graciously gave us a lot of new photography to use. And so that's something as well, if you aren't able to do a full redesign right now, even just working with someone to get some new photography or having a photo shoot, just swap out, even if it's seasonally, it just gives your whole website a new look without even having to redesign the back end. And then, like I mentioned, we made a lot of improvements to the back end. So just bringing it more up to date using the WordPress block editor, which I think Patty's going to talk more about, but it gives us more flexibility. It allows us to be a little more creative while still staying within our brand. And I can say, as someone who works in the website almost every day, it's so much easier to use and will set us up for success for the future. So now I wanted to just talk through kind of what our process looked like. Oh, sorry, Matthew, I saw you came off. Do you have a question?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, can you go back?
Yeah.
I mean, you brought it up, and I think this is a great time just to interject, and Marianne probably could kind of chime in too, but you mentioned photography and images. Can you just kind of talk about image size or sizing and how that plays, how that is incorporated on your website? I mean, you don't want super large images that slow down page load time. How do you kind of use the new photos and size them right for your website?
Yeah, that's a great point, because something I'll touch on the next slide is that we did a site audit early in the process, which kind of assessed some of those things about how our pages were loading and the things that were slowing things down. And one of the things we got dinged for was our photo sizes. So we previously had kind of just thrown things up like the size that they were, even if they were really large. If you're working with a professional photographer who has a nice camera, they're going to be big files. And so that was one of the lessons learned for the redesign, was to take the time to open the photos in Photoshop, resize them to your appropriate width. So you can work with your design team to know, is that 1600 pixels or 2000 pixels or whatever. And they also suggested doing something more like 90% quality, that they don't need to be a full 100%, that they're still going to look the same to the user, but just even that little bit of savings on your photos can help. So I know I find myself sometimes being like, oh, I don't want to open and resize these photos, but it does pay off in the long run. And it's a problem that can compound over time if you just throw them up there really big.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so just looking at our process here. So this first box on self-assessment is sort of a joke, sort of serious, that I feel like I started assessing the Greenway's website from the moment I applied for the job. So, I spent a lot of time on the website looking around, and like I mentioned, we became a National Heritage Year in 2019, which is when I joined the Greenway. And so I just started to have some questions of like, well, where's this kind of content going to go? Or, why is this navigation the way it is? It wasn't serving us for where we were at in that point of time moving forward. And so I started to realize that we were going to need to do a redesign. It took me a little while, I think, to get the confidence and the certainty to say, yes, this is something we need to budget for. We need to plan ahead. So fast forward a couple of years, and in about 2021, reached out to Patty and Sarah, who we were already working with because they designed our site originally, and said, hey, I think it's time to do a redesign. So one thing I think they'll touch on later is like, give your team early heads up. Don't expect that you're going to get on their schedule for the next week. Like, make sure you let them know months in advance. And the good thing is there's plenty that you can be doing while you wait to get on their schedule. So like I just mentioned, we worked with an agency for a fairly small scope of work to do a site audit, which was looking at the actual functionality, the speed, the performance, the accessibility of the site, to see if there was maybe some underlying problems that we didn't know about. We also did a scope with user testing, which was bringing in some volunteers, some who kind of knew the site a little bit, some who didn't know the site at all, And there was a script that was actually written, sort of a series of quizzes of, can you make a donation on the site? How would you find this thing on the interactive map? And so it was a chance to test our assumptions, because obviously we are very close to our own websites. We think they're great and they make sense, but does the user agree? So that was pretty insightful, helped confirm some of our suspicions. And then we just kind of did this scope of research and planning, which is, going out there, looking at other websites. For us as a new national heritage area, we looked at other national heritage areas across the country to get ideas. I literally was like copying and pasting and making these horrible mock-ups to send to Patty and Sarah to give them a good idea of, where we were going. So the more planning you can do up front and get your team off on a good foot is going to help you later. Then we launched the real project, which was the design and development, working with Patty and Sarah. And while they're doing their scope of work, which they're going to, be talking more about later, I was working on content development. So thinking through all the different pages of the site, how are you going to edit or update existing content? Are there new pages where you don't have any content? Making sure you allow time to work with your team members, get approval, and highly recommend creating a good system and being organized during this phase, because for us, again, complex organization, 30-year history, we had, I don't even know how many pages of content, but a lot. So being organized with all of that was really important. I had spreadsheets and folders and all of that. Then the next piece was the exciting part, which is getting the keys to the site. So Patty sat down and had a training with us, myself and any other staff members who were going to be using the site, to teach us how to use all the new tools. And something important with this is that having documentation of that training was really helpful for us. So Patty created a robust Google Doc that talks through all of our different designs and templates and functionality, so that when we had a question a month later or 6 months later, or a team member who doesn't use the site very often goes to use it, they can reference that. So whether it's a video or it's written, I highly recommend asking about that, what the training process and documentation looks like. Next part, content input. So we were working in a staging environment, which is sort of a copy of your website, which allows you to be playing around and doing all this work without it affecting your live website. So once we got the keys to the staging site, it was go time to start populating those pages, putting that content in, getting those photos just right, all of that. So that was a several month process for me. And then final checking, bringing some people in with some fresh eyes, check links, make sure everything looks good, makes sense. You've been very close to this project at this point, so definitely good to have some outside eyes. And then it pushes live. And for us, there was one last stage, which was doing a small scope of search engine optimization improvements to look at the new content and just see if there was anywhere where we could include some keywords or some updates. So see. Oh, I didn't need to have that little wiggle in there. All right, so last slide here for me, key takeaways. So this was my first time going through a big website redesign. Of course, I have worked on websites in the past. I have a personal website, but this was my first time as an organization going through this. So of course, there's some lessons learned. So one thing is designing your content or developing your content early, because it's going to help inform your design and functionality. So knowing, are you going to have 5 paragraphs of text, or are you going to have 1? Are you going to have 10 pictures, or are you going to have no pictures? Those types of things, like when the content starts to get real, that's when you really get a good sense of your design. And so the earlier you do that, it's going to help you avoid deviations in your scope or anything like that. The second one is being realistic about your bandwidth and scaling the project. So I unfortunately had my teammate leave at the beginning of our project. And so that really changed things in terms of how much help I had. And looking back, I think I really held this close and kind of treated this website like my baby, and maybe didn't ask for help as much as I could have. Because it feels hard sometimes, because you've got that spreadsheet and you've got those 100 pages of content to like explain and bring someone in. But I highly recommend like having a team around you, even if they're not marketing people, whether it's a volunteer or an intern or some other teammates outside of marketing, to just help you with little tasks here and there. It's going to make your life a lot easier, because You do have to keep doing your regular job while you build the website, even though building the website feels like a full-time job. The work doesn't end on launch day. So just remembering that website needs continual attention and updating and updating those photos or creating new itineraries. So just thinking about that and accounting for that in your regular job and your workload. Planning for ongoing maintenance needs with your development partner. So like I mentioned, Patty was already on board with us before this started and continues to be on board with us after launch day. So things will come up, things will break, things, just funny little things, or you want to change something. It's been really, really valuable to have Patty and Sarah as continued partners who I can go to with questions or issues or ideas beyond launch day. And then the last one is live, not perfect. So this was another hard one for me, but just remembering that it's never going to be perfect. Websites are dynamic. There's always more you can do, but just getting over that hump of launching the website is really important to allow you to just move forward and kind of, you can continue to chip away at those tasks, but just get past that launch and it'll get easier from there. So that's everything from me. And I know Patty and Sarah are going to talk about more of the design and development side of things as well.
Thanks, Katie. Someone was wondering just about the total cost for this redesign. I don't know if you're comfortable sharing that, but if you could provide some type of ballpark or just percentage, kind of giving people an idea of what goes into something of this magnitude.
Yeah, I actually don't have the cost. Like I didn't actually look at that in preparation for this. And I think we probably wouldn't want to give an exact cost just because every project is so different. It's something that you need to budget for. I will say that it's, several $1,000s as a nonprofit. We had a budget that we went in. I think going into with your team with a budget in mind is always helpful rather than just going to them and saying, how much is this going to cost? Because you can scale the project to accomplish as much as you can for what budget you have. So I'm not able to share an exact number right now, but I'm sure that Patty or Sarah could work with someone to give them an estimate as well if they wanted to talk about their personal needs.
Perfect, thanks. I will just add on to that. State of Washington Tourism did our own website redesign and we did it in phases. So you can start like phase 1 will be, just the basics or XYZ. And then, in 6 months or a year, you can roll out phase 2. So you don't have to do everything all at once too.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Katie, excellent. Thank you for all that information. Well done. And good job on this entire process with your redesign. I actually have a question or two. Can you go back a slide to your
Sure.
timeline? And I'm just thinking of cost-saving measures for other nonprofits like yourself that are on tight budgets. The self-assessment sounds great, and you paid a company to help you do that, correct?
So the self-assessment part was
Or the audit.
just us internally. The audit was a company that we worked with.
It.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, Marianne, myself have connections or long histories with academia. Could nonprofits kind of work with a faculty member and students on a site audit or any kind of assessment? Is that a possibility that you thought about, or might these nonprofit organizations kind of look for kind of free help, free labor from students essentially?
Possibly. I know we get messages sometimes from different college programs of people looking for projects. And so I think that could definitely be something that you could do. I know we went the route of working with an agency partially at the recommendation of some of our board members who had marketing experience and really thought the user testing and all of that was valuable. But yeah, I think there's probably a lot you could do yourself, and working with students could definitely be something to look into at least.
Yeah, and speaking of that too, with the maintenance that's required and with all your content, your blog posts and what have you, do you have a coordinator or an intern to help with all that?
We do not. Yeah, like I mentioned, my teammate left, and so it was just myself for about a year. We do have a second marketing person now on my team. And so that's where I think it gets really important to just remember that when you're looking at your whole workload, just accounting for the website in there. And I know I use a project management tool called Asana, and I have something in there for quarterly to refresh photos, to like if there's a page where something is timely, like Trailhead Direct is something that we promote on our site and it only runs for certain dates. So I have a reminder in there like, oh, take it down on this day. So I think just using different tools like that to make sure you're doing the essential tasks and then just buffering in time. Like I'm hoping next month, all of our big events are coming to a close. Things are a little quieter. That's a great time to just go in, check your content and do some updates.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you, Katie. And I believe, is it Sarah next?
Yeah.
Yep.
Take it away, Sarah.
All right. Well, my name's Sarah Colfan, and I own and operate Beans and Rice Creative Studios, which is my freelance graphic design business. I design for print and for web, and partner with Patty on web projects like the one we did for Mountains to Sound. Katie did such a great job talking through her process. I think a lot of what I'm going to talk about here is going to be redundant because she covered a lot of it. But I'm going to talk a little bit about steps that you can take when you're ready to redesign your website and touch on just a little bit of design principles. I won't dive too deep into that here. But so this first slide, assessing your current website. So now that you're ready to work on your own website, what are some things that you want to consider at the start? And answering some of these questions will really help inform the work that you do for your web project. So what are your goals for the site? And that might be functional goals, like you want to capture new memberships or sell products, or maybe you want it to perform better for mobile, or do a better job telling your own story. So just starting with this list is a really good place to begin. And think about what is working and what's not. Do you have lagging load times for certain pages? Is the look and feel straight out of the 90s? So, and I think what Katie, she talked about when she came into Mountains to Sound, she came in with a fresh set of eyes. So that was, that's kind of a nice thing that often sparks, change. Just, oh, this thing looks out of date, or it's not doing a good enough job. So website navigation, this can either be really helpful or it can really hurt users finding your content. And they can tend to get wieldy and large over time if you don't have a good system set up. So navigation should really be helping your users get to content right away. Is the content out of date? Can it do a better job moving people through your site by adding call to actions, read more links, that sort of thing? And is there specific functionality that your site needs to do that it's not doing right now, like e-commerce, or do you need a map? Thinking about what your budget is for improvement is really important at the start. In fact, coming into an introductory meeting with some budget ideas is really helpful, and it will help speed things along. And also thinking ahead about your timeline for improvements. Just if there's any specific milestones or key dates that you need to have a new site launched by, starting with those and working backwards to build a timeline is often a good way to go. Yep, that's it. Seeking out inspiration. So this is, we encourage our clients to start to take this step at the start of each web project. And it's really fun to just curate a list of websites that you like. Also adding sites that you don't like is really useful as well. And share this with your design team. And when you do, make sure that you describe and talk about what it is that you like and dislike, so that we can use these live examples. And live examples will often do a better job explaining what it is that you're trying to accomplish. If there's something that already exists on a website and you like that functionality, you want to achieve that, being able to take a look at that and see how it works is going to give us a great head start. This is a good way also to just discover what's out there. There might be something, a design style or a way of treating photos that you haven't even considered before. So this will open up new possibilities. And when you're curating your list, definitely look beyond your industry, because you might find those hidden gems elsewhere. So what makes a good web partner? The first, the most important way to figure that out is just to get to know them. So we always begin our process with an introductory meeting. You'll be working for a long time with your design team, so it's a good idea to make sure you're going to get along, because you'll be spending lots of time together. And in this meeting, you can find out if they have a good understanding of what it is you're trying to achieve. And we'll ask questions and try and find out, this is a good chance to get more information about the project. So we can let you know if it's in our wheelhouse, if this is something we can help you with. We could also make recommendations on how to accomplish some of these goals. Maybe that's to fit your budget. So this intro meeting really informs our next step, which is when we put together a bid for the project. And you can also ask for references. Relevant experience is nice, it's not necessary, but if they have worked in your industry before, they're going to be able to bring that along with them and maybe make, again, better recommendations, or have a better understanding of how to tell your story. And price is often a deciding factor. So it might be a good idea to get multiple bids at the start of a project, and just understand that there can be a price swing depending on who you're talking to. If it's one freelancer versus a big studio. And then expertise. So we have portfolio on our websites of jobs that we've done, and that's often a really good place to start. When you're looking at projects that your team has worked on in the past, have they accomplished goals that you're trying to get done with your new site? Is their aesthetic something that you like? So just gauging on whether or not they actually have the technical know-how to get the job done. So some things that you can expect as you start on this process is that major one is that it's just going to take a lot of time. So like Katie mentioned, it's really good to engage your team well in advance of when you need your site up. We get asked sometimes, to launch a site within a month, and that's just simply not possible for, a couple of reasons. One being that these projects take, 4 to 6 months. And also we have projects lined up, and we can't typically just start immediately on your job. So just think about that ahead of time, and know that it's going to be really difficult to have a web team take on a job with a quick turn. It's really useful too on your end if you can assign a point person to the job. That just helps streamline conversations and get feedback approvals a little bit faster. And sometimes without that, projects can lag or drag on. So this just kind of keeps things rolling. And also maybe thinking about what your approval process is like ahead of time, getting that established. Are you going to, do you have multiple stakeholders that need to have eyes on everything that you're looking at? So just thinking about that ahead of time. These are big projects and they take a lot of time. So, and costs can vary. Like Katie was saying, when we put together our bids, we do tailor that to the client and the type of work that we're trying to do. But if you have an understanding of your budget up front, that can be really useful. It can be a time saver, and also we might be able to make some recommendations in order to tailor the job so that it fits your budget. And in our proposals, we will include specific functional items as like line item add-ons. So, that's just an easy way to see how costs are adding up. And maybe you can look at some of those line items and kick something down the road for further, just to make the budget work for you right now. And just understand that this is going to take a lot of time. This job will impact your workload, and because you are steering the ship and sharing your vision with us. And Katie mentioned content generation does take a lot of time. And if you're not working with a copywriter, or if you don't have dedicated team taking that on, just know that writing text and gathering photos does require a lot of time. So some of these questions you can ask early on in the process, just to be well informed and kind of have some answers right away. So what sort of support is included post-launch from your development team? We provide 1 month of assistance after launch, because that's typically when you get a lot of eyes on the site, it's launched. That's when things can go wrong. Is ongoing maintenance included in the proposed scope or budget? Or can they provide that? And if they can, what is their fee? Just understanding those numbers up front can set you up for success down the line. What sort of web hosts will my site require? Certain web hosts, Patty's going to talk a lot more about web hosts, but you kind of you pay for what you get, and certain web hosts will support your site better. What other ongoing fees will be required? Sometimes to meet functional requirements, we use plugins to accomplish that, and they may have monthly or annual fees. So, and then how much time will be required from your team throughout the process? We throw in a really rough estimate in our proposals for the time requirement from you, but just that's something that's good to talk a little bit more in depth about when you are, meeting with your team. And what if I need enhancements down the road? We build sites in WordPress, which is a really great tool. It's expandable. There's a lot of technical support around it, and it allows for enhancements and easy growth down the road. So just that's something that we share with our clients right away. And we also share that we're available to continue partnering with them if they want to do some further enhancements. And just thinking about, what is your content strategy going to be? If there's no dedicated staff, is it going to be on you to generate a bunch of content? Does it make sense to have a blog? Because a stale blog is always a bad thing. So, this might inform whether you have editorial content like blog, or you might lean more on evergreen content, which just needs updates periodically. And if you don't have editorial content, can you serve up evergreen content a little bit more dynamically, so that when I come back to your site, I can see something new, or if I'm on a page, it might suggest another page to visit. And sometimes looping in your social channels can also offer ways of refreshing your content. So this is just like real quick web design 101 crash course. And web design really needs to help support the goals of your website. So whatever your vision is, the design can't supersede it. It needs to, match your starting point and your end goals. It needs to support your brand and, weave that into the site. It needs to, so your design team really needs to have a good understanding of your brand principles. And at the start, one of our in the early phase of our process, I'll ask for branding material right away, just to gain that understanding and make sure that when I'm starting On design, I have that in mind always. Design needs to make sure that the functional goals are also achieved. So if there's a web form, you know, it should look nice. It should be easy to use. It should, you know, help your user move through it. Design also should maintain accessibility standards so that your content is available to everyone. So things like contrast or text sizes, you know, design should be checking all those boxes as well. And it also needs to manage a lot of content. The Mountains to Sound website has a lot of content. So we came up with different modules and different layouts in order to serve it up differently, to make it more digestible, just to add visual interests. So that's definitely the design needs to help your user move through content well, and it needs to help your audience find information fast, which again, that leans on the navigation. It also leans on page layout and how you move through content on the page.
Hey, Sarah, just to jump in really quickly before we turn it over to Patty, we had a few questions about accessibility come up in the chat. Marianne, is this a good time to address those?
Yeah, if that works for you guys. I mean, I think we answered that yes, accessibility was considered as a factor during this process, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
And so other than the things you briefly just mentioned there with like contrast and text sizes and fonts, what other like primary accessibility considerations did you kind of work through in this redesign process?
Use of colors. Sometimes like a branded color might be just slightly too light. And if we can just take it a tad bit darker so that it, you know, it's connected to the brand color palette. It's not the official like hex numbers, but it's close, and it allows for something to be more readable. So color, definitely. Font sizes. If you're going to have white text on a color background, same thing. That color needs to be either, you know, it needs to provide enough contrast. And so I think color really is where I spend a lot of time. And I'll check my color values with web tools in order to make sure that they are meeting those accessibility standards.
Katie, I think you're on mute.
Forgot I was muted, sorry. Two other things real quick. Back to the photos thing. What am I forgetting the title?
Alt text
for your photos. Again, it's another step for you, but it is more accessible for screen readers, describing what the photo is. And then something that we improved on from like my standpoint as a user of the website was our headings. So in the past, we had kind of willy-nilly used headings like just because we liked how they looked. And that was something that I learned through this process, was like making sure you followed the pattern of like H1, H2, H3, because that again helps screen readers follow along with your content. So that's something that we are much more deliberate about than we used to be.
There was also a lot of work within the coding of the website to make it accessible as well. Sort of behind the scenes, we did we use accessible coding standards on the site.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for mentioning that multi-approach to accessibility. So this is my last slide, and just going to mention some design principles that I keep in mind when I'm designing comps. So I always lean very heavy into visuals, and so don't be afraid to use really large photos, because I feel like a broken record because I say this to all my clients, but people know how to scroll. They will move beyond the photo and get to the content you want them to read, but the photo really can pull them in, and it helps to set the tone, and there's just a lot of benefits from using a lot of photography. Illustrations also a really engaging sort of third tier that you can add. So you have your text, your photos, and illustrations or icons to just help make things more skimmable, to break up text, to just make it more interesting. Maps too are great. They look great and they're also highly functional. So I try to come up with varied layouts as well, again, just to support different types of content. Also, just to make it interesting, especially if you're scrolling down a page with lots of text, and just provides you, the web owner, with different ways of presenting content to your user. Good contrast. So, I talked about contrast between text, the color of the text in the background, but also as you scroll through the page, are there discernible sections which will help, again, move your eye and just break up content, have the user make the page more readable, and a clear hierarchy, which Katie was great to mention that helps with accessibility, but it also just helps in delivery and prioritizing your content. Thinking about adding media like videos to your site just offers another way of storytelling, and sometimes people don't want to read and they just want to watch something. And then just keeping text succinct and providing opportunity for lengthy text, but maybe not on the homepage, and just so trying to be thoughtful about how to, again, not overwhelm your visitor with text, but just provide enough to give them the information they want, and then a way to read more. So I think that's it for me.
Thank you, Sarah. And we have about 10, 11 minutes left. I think that's still enough time for Patty to share her slides. We'll still have time for Q&A. So Patty, over to you.
Okay, I'll be quick. I'm Patty O'Hara. I work with Sarah on a lot of projects. I'm a freelance web developer, and I've been working with the Greenway for a number of years. We designed and built their original site, and that was in 2017. And then I was really happy to be involved in the redesign too, because I learned a lot through that process for my own needs. But so just when you bring on a developer, one of the biggest things we do is just help you determine the right suite of tools. So, that meet your functionality needs that are also going to be meeting your budget as well. So, whether if you have the budget for custom development, or we need to go sort of off the shelf things. I do work in WordPress, and so that means, there's a lot of decisions that we need to make about you get a theme and then all the plugins, whether we do custom development, et cetera, et cetera. So we try to, understanding the goals and the budget, as Sarah mentioned, will inform all of that as well. So also, as Katie mentioned, we do a developer or someone on the developer design team should be providing training. So to help you use this, use the site on your own. We don't maintain content on sites. I do maintenance, but it's all the technical part. Like the goal is for you to be in there and developing your own content and using the site as much as you can. So we try to set people up for success. We also can be brought in to do custom development as needed. Sometimes, the tool that you can just go get for free on anywhere might not exactly meet your needs. So sometimes we either write our own code or, make a bridge between something off the shelf and your needs. And then the ongoing support and maintenance, everything, the web is constantly changing. Technology is constantly changing. So you do need to have it you can't just set it and forget it. You do need to be maintaining code and maintaining plugins and all of that. So that's another thing that we offer. So as I mentioned, doing the Greenway site we called it a refresh, but we ended up actually rebuilding the entire site, because one of the things that I'm trying to do is we're always trying to, we want to set you up for success. So, and we're always trying to strike a balance between, giving you tools to maintain consistency, but then also flexibility for the long haul. And I think on the first go around, we leaned really far into consistency. We had really highly templated pages, and where, you just put in the headline and the text and everything gets formatted for you. But in the redesign, we were able to, really take it. The timing worked out really well for this project, that it was one of the first big projects we did using the WordPress block editor, which is a whole new direction for WordPress, which provides a lot more flexibility in terms of building out pages. And so with that, we can kind of put some guardrails on. So, we set the fonts and the colors and all of that. But then when you go build the page, you can decide like, oh, we need a header 2 here, and we need a paragraph here, and we need 3 columns here. Like all of those options are now available within the editor. So this one, then going forward, if Katie needs a new template, it's going to be a lot easier to help, build that sort of template with the blocks, as opposed to having to write a whole page. So just a quick note, a lot of times we get asked like what about Wix or Squarespace or something like that? And those are all fine tools. They're sort of a one-stop shop. It's going to be probably a lower cost solution. So if your budget doesn't allow for something bigger, you might run into, as your site grows, that you find that it's limited in features, or you're not able to customize it exactly how you want. So there definitely there's a case for using all of those tools. We use WordPress especially on a site like Mountains to Sound, because we can customize it as much as is needed. There's a very large community out there. There's 1 million tools that you can pull down to use, or it's also possible to do custom development on top of it. So WordPress just offers, it's in the long run probably a more expensive solution, but it's also, a lot more flexibility. And once you put something into WordPress, like with Katie, we had to rebuild some things, but we were able to, just translate all the blog posts. They just came over, and those, so once it's in the database, it's in the database, and we can reuse it. So I often also get asked about hosting, and as Sarah mentioned, you get what you pay for. You might find web hosts all offering, $2 or $3 a month. Sounds very appetizing, but you're going to get what you pay for. So speed, server space or memory. So all of those photos do take up space. So thinking about that. Security, and then customer service is probably a big one. Some of these, you have a problem and you need to get help. And usually if you have a problem with your web host, it's something that's very wrong and you need it fixed soon. So you don't want to, you need to be able to contact someone. And then just generally overall reliability on your website. And then we've talked about on self-assessment, and I just wanted to give a list of some tools that you can use yourself to, test your page speed, checking for SEO issues. That will, like Screaming Frog, you can test for like broken links and missing images. You can also run accessibility tests on your own websites, and there's a couple tools there. And then also, just getting friends and colleagues to look at your website on different devices. Like you might be a Mac person and everything you do is on the Mac and it looks great. And then you have a friend with that uses Microsoft Edge and it looks totally different. Like, so just making sure that you've tested on different devices, different sizes, and technology. And then, as we've all been talking about, is you keeping your content fresh. So, that's like a big part of managing a website, is just keeping the content alive. And then lastly, just wanted to leave you, these are some of the projects that Sarah and I have also worked on together. We've done, we're working a lot in the Skagit Valley right now with a couple farmers, and Eat Local First is another big project that we are working on as well. And I think that's all of our slides.
All right, very cool. Thanks, Patty, and thanks, Katie and Sarah. We have technically 2 minutes left in the webinar today. Ladies, do we have a hard stop at 11, or can we kind of go in past that? Is that okay?
Yeah,
If
I
people,
think
okay,
I have
excellent.
availability, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So if folks want to stay on the webinar and ask questions, now is the time to do that. So pop them in the Q&A or the chat. And if you have a complicated question, I can even unmute you and you can voice that question to Katie, Sarah, Patty, and Marianne. So now is the time, folks. Go ahead, ask your questions. I have one or two in my back pocket that I can ask Sarah or Patty, but I just want to give the floor to the attendees.
We don't have any questions in the Q&A yet, but I'll keep an eye out for questions in the chat. And I believe, Matt, that you also had a survey link you wanted to drop in the chat before people leave.
Oh, yes, yes. Before folks, yeah, if people have to jump off, now's the time just to click on the link. You don't have to fill out this 2-minute survey. It's 2 minutes, perhaps less than 2 minutes, but just leave it up in your browser as a tab, get to it maybe later today. This survey link will ask for feedback on this webinar and the rest of the Tourism Skills Shop series. It will help us plan for 2023, the webinars next year. Sadly, this will be the last webinar in the Tourism Skills Shop for 2022. We will take December off and let everyone get ready for the holidays. So this is the last webinar in 2022. It's been a blast. I think I've learned a lot. I think they've improved as we've gone on throughout the year. So I appreciate everyone's patience and learning and understanding in this entire process. So again, feedback from you is really important for our skill shop in 2023. And Marianne, did you pop that in the chat?
I just sent the YouTube link to all of our previous Skillshop recordings on our YouTube channel. This will also be shared with a follow-up email to attendees, so keep an eye out for that in your email.
Oh, and the link to the survey will be in an email along with the link to this recording. So if you don't get to it today, you'll be reminded later. Let's see, any other questions, folks? I just have one other question for those folks that have the time to stick around. I think it's really important. I remember from my SEO and web design days, Sarah and Patty, can you talk about the importance, or is the homepage the most important page on a website? Is it any page and every page, if someone's kind of looking for the content that they really need, the information that they really need? I bring up the home pages because I think, you know, some folks are become kind of transfixed on the home page and its importance, which it is, and they have all the bells and whistles on their homepage, or have way too much information on their homepage, and they have drop-down menus that are a mile long and don't know whether to kind of put tabs on the page and have it alphabetical order or based on the order of importance. I mean, can you just briefly talk about the importance of the homepage?
Yeah, sure. The homepage is very important. It's, you know, your visitor is going to set eyes first there. It's an opportunity to, I think it's a great opportunity to not be super wordy and not tell, like, you know, give paragraphs of text to your information. It's tempting to do that. It's tempting to put, like, I want them to, you know, to read all of this, and so I want it on the homepage. But it's actually more effective to use the homepage to kind of kick your users to other pages where they can kind of delve in and get more information. And you can do that quite a bit down the homepage, depending on how the design is. You know, if you do have like tabs and drop downs and animations, that's going to maybe freak your user out a little bit. That might be a little much. But if you've got, you know, a little bit of text with a CTA, you can scroll beneath that, maybe a photo breaks it up, and then there's another opportunity for a call to action. I think there is opportunity to get lots of information on the home page. It's just being succinct with your text and and relying on the fact that the user will go elsewhere to get more info.
Is a search box a requirement then?
A search box doesn't hurt. I don't think it's a requirement, but I think it's always nice to have multiple avenues of gaining information. There's nothing really wrong with it, as long as it's not like destroying the design.
Sure. Excellent. Patty, anything from you?
No, I mean, just from my own experience, having a search box is nice. People don't tend to use them, you know,
Okay.
internally on a site, you know, because you can pull up, like, as long as your site is properly SEO'd, the searching on Google would ideally
True.
land them to the right page on your website. But
Good point. Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions in the chat or Q&A, Marianne?
Nope, it doesn't look like it.
Okay. Well, Katie, any last words from you today? Parting thoughts, wisdom?
I don't think so. Just thanks everyone for being here. And it's a ever evolving learning process for all of us, keeping up with all the technology and all of that. So hopefully everyone got at least some little tidbit out of today. So thanks for being here.
Excellent.
Thanks for having us.
Well, thank you for being here, Katie, Sarah, Patty, and Marianne. And thank you, attendees. We had a great time today. We always seem to run out of time. I have a blast learning and engaging with panelists as well as attendees. So again, this will be our last webinar in 2022. We will take December off and look for us in 2023, sometime in January, the 3rd or 4th, probably the 4th Thursday in January. So panelists, if you don't mind, stay on the line and we can have a debrief, but I'll let everyone else take off. Thanks all.